vary in strength. Okay, so you can have a strong acid, you can have a strong base, you can have a weak acid, you can have a weak base. A strong acid is one that ionizes completely. Okay, when they ionize completely, they release a lot of hydrogen ions. Okay, an example of a strong acid which would be HCl, hydrochloric acid. Where have we seen hydrochloric acid? In the stomach, right? Gastric juices, hydrochloric acid. Acids can also be weak. Weak acids are ones that ionize less completely and dissociate and release less hydrogen ions. The example given is carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is a weak acid. Okay. Base. Bases can be strong or weak. A strong base is one that dissociates to release more hydroxide ions. Okay. OH is a hydroxide. Weak bases dissociate to release less hydroxide ions. Keep in mind that bases oftentimes are negatively charged ions. And negatively charged ions can combine with hydrogen ions to neutralize them, right? Okay, so the example of a weak base would be sodium bicarb. Okay, so when they dissociate, when this dissociates or ionizes, it releases sodium ions and bicarb. Bicarb is considered a base. Bicarb can then combine with hydrogen ion to form carbonic acid, which is a weak acid. So a weak base combines with a hydrogen to form a weak acid. A weak acid can dissociate to form a weak base. Regulation of hydrogen ion concentration. You need to know that normal metabolic reactions, all these processes that we were talking about, normal metabolic reactions release more acids than they do bases. Okay? The whole point of acid-base balance is you need equal acids and bases in the body, right? Same number of acids in as acids out, same number of bases in as bases out. They should balance out. But because the normal metabolic reactions inside your body creates more acids than it does bases, you have to maintain a balance by trying to eliminate the excess acid. Okay? So going back to what those metabolic reactions are that create more acids, here are some examples. Metabolism of glucose, metabolism of fatty acids, metabolism of amino acids, all create more acids than bases. So if you end up with more acids than bases, there are three main ways to eliminate that acid. Okay, so we can eliminate them through acid-base buffers or through physiologic buffers, which we'll be talking about after this board is erased and repopulated. But the two main physiologic buffers are respiratory buffer and renal buffer. Okay, respiratory system excretes carbon dioxide. You guys learned when we were doing the respiratory system that if you have a lot of carbon dioxide accumulating in your body is acidic, right? So if you're acidic, in order to get rid of the acid, you're going to try to release the carbon dioxide. So respiratory system tries to deal with excess acid by blowing out the CO2, okay? The renal system deals with excess acid by excreting hydrogen ions. So if you've got too much hydrogen ion in your system and you're acidic, you urinate out that hydrogen ion, okay? So then we want to talk about buffers, okay? So there are two types of buffers. There are chemical buffers and there are physiologic buffers, okay? A buffer itself, definition of a buffer, is something that can stabilize a pH within a solution despite adding or losing, right? Adding acids or bases or losing acids or bases, okay? And in doing so, it minimizes any changes in pH. There are three types of chemical buffers. You need to know these three types of chemical buffers. Bicarb buffer, phosphate buffer, protein buffer. Okay. Starting with the first one, bicarb buffer, these work inside the cell as well as outside the cell. So they're of importance intracellularly as well as extracellularly. And the way it works is if you have, let's say, if you have an excess of hydrogen ions, Are you acidic or basic? Acidic. If you have an excess of hydrogen ions, the hydrogen ion can combine with your bicarbonate, which is a weak base. When it combines with the bicarb, it forms H2CO3, which is carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is a weak acid, right? So the weak acid, carbonic acid, when needed, can dissociate to release hydrogen ions in bicarb again. Okay, so it's a way of kind of shifting back and forth from weak acid to weak base to act as a buffer. Okay. Phosphate system. Phosphate buffer also works both intracellularly and extracellularly, but it's of particular importance inside in the intracellular fluid and inside the renal tubular fluid and urine when you excrete out urine. Okay? So if you have excess hydrogen ions in an acidic environment, the hydrogen ion combines with HPO4, which is monohydrogen phosphate. Monohydrogen phosphate acts as a weak base. When they combine, they form dihydrogen phosphate, H2PO4, which acts as a weak acid. That weak acid, when needed, can dissociate again, release hydrogen ions, and you reform that monohydrogen phosphate. Okay. And finally, protein buffer. Protein buffer, if you guys can recall, proteins are made up of amino acids. You've got long chains of amino acids that make up peptides, long chains of peptides that make up polypeptides, which then make up protein. The amino acids have components with it which act as buffers because there's a base portion and an acid portion. So amino acid has a carboxyl group, COOH. Okay. If the environment in the body has low concentration of hydrogens, low concentration of hydrogens means acidic or basic? Basic, so if you're basic, low hydrogen ion concentration, this carboxyl group can dissociate to release hydrogen ions, right? And then the hydrogen ions, because it releases this hydrogen ion, it will minimize the pH change, okay? Amino acids also have an amino group. The amino group is NH2. So if you have an excess concentration of hydrogen ions, that amino group can take up the excess hydrogen ions to form NH3. And you guys keep note of these names here, okay, because we're going to be talking about it in a little while. NH2 means amino, NH3 is ammonia, NH4 is an ammonium, okay? So as we're adding more hydrogens, they're named differently, and then each of these can add hydrogens or release hydrogens, okay? Any questions?